Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to yet another week of an hour-long podcast, blogcast, whatever you like to call it, that is simulcast over YouTube, Twitch, and Discord, as stated below. Yes, on this channel, we take that subject, we talk about it daily, Monday through Friday, essentially, and we break it down. Really, it's become Monday through Thursday, but whatever. And we deep dive into it. And of course, today's subject is about a very popular Netflix, at least Netflix here in the broadcast in the States, a documentary about the Tiger King, Joe Exotic, and the host of individuals that surround Joe Exotic and make up a very colorful group of individuals. And how much can we pull from that for tabletop gaming? Well, quite a lot, actually. Now, this is World Building Wednesday, and we like to take that subject and imagine a world where that particular theme has dominated and has taken over everything. Now, I would like to tigers for our world, like tigers represent the pinnacle of like a predatory beast or animal or something. But in our classic tabletop fantasy, we might need to go a little bit further with this thing. So I'm thinking we may go dragons, or sub-dragons, let's say. And when I say dragons, follow me on this world-building extravaganza. So, pulling a little bit of a parallel from our own world, maybe the world had been dominated or terrorized even by dragon kind, these powerful, majestic, eternal, nearly demigod creatures that represent basically all of the fears and the power that humanity could never have. And over time, great warriors and hunters have gone out to slaughter these things that have terrorized humanity for so long. Maybe they killed them and enslaved them. Maybe they used to be, the dragons used to be the kings and queens of the world, or androgynistically, the kings of the world. And so, but that was many generations ago. And true dragons are few and far between. Maybe no one's even seen a true dragon. And humanity, understanding that maybe the dragons aren't around anymore, but they crave that power, that desire, even to be tantalized by the fear of exposing themselves to the dragons. So now true dragons don't exist, but all of the other lizard-like descendants exist. The worms and the serpents and the wyverns and the lizards and reptiles and everything in between are in existence. The tinier, smaller pseudo-dragons and mutated half-dragons and things. And so those have become captured, placed into zoos, placed into a bit of a protected habitats, a menagerie. Great criminals have at their feet curled up giant lizard-like creatures of white scales or blackened scales or greenish scales. Some of them may even be reskinned or reflavored from standard statistics like a wyvern with its poison tail and its lower extremities having like reptile dragon-like claws, but it's a winged creature without having a sixth set of limbs. But maybe they're reskinned, so there's like an Arctic version of the wyvern. Maybe there's a swamp version, a mountain volcanic version or something. The same may go for some of the pseudo lizard-like things in the world, such as basilisks or even dragon turtles and such. Okay, and so true dragons have not returned, but maybe the people have been using them. They've used them as places for people to see them. Maybe they're even used as mounts or guardians, as pets and hunters, and this has caused quite a bit of a stir. The old cults that believed in the dragons may want to have them return to the world. There could be orders of warriors that ride upon their back and don't want to see their see them caged, but want to see them used majestically to the people. There may even be people who are out there trying to bring back the true dragons or free the captivity of these beasts, despite the fact that they no longer are as intelligent and majestic and long-lived as they used to be. Maybe there are circles that want to release them out into the wild still because they don't deserve to be caged. No one deserves to be caged as they are. And yet the public still will pay to see them behind their cage, an individual having trained them to see them rear up and fly through the air and fly through circles of flame and belch out small amounts of fire, much like the animated How to Train Your Dragon animated movies and series. And so I could imagine the player characters maybe having to find the dragon eggs, or some have gotten out and they need to capture them back and put them back into their cages. And you could fill the world with criminals who are using them, the authorities who are abusing their power using them, the organizations that want to free them, whether they are protesting or throwing a monkey wrench into the thing, or literally sabotaging the location to free them out into the world. And also the groups that want to euthanize them simply for to put them out of their misery in as gentle a way as possible. They are neither their true selves, they are neither true dragons, and yet they could never be free because they could never return back to their majesty. So just putting them out of their misery. It could be that dragonborn in this world, much like a lizard folk and kobolds and such, may be descended from dragons, or maybe they aren't a race, but a transformation. The people who truly believe in the majesty of the old dragons because of possibly how corrupt and interbreeded these scaled owners are. Maybe the people want the dragons to return to their natural power, and so much like an individual in our own time, in our own world, who wants to take on the totem of something through their dress and their behavior on a spiritual level. Maybe dragonborn, it's not whether you're born as a dragon, but you draw that into you until you are transformed into such a thing. And so maybe you are looked at, it is no different than, it may be a transformation no different than, say, a druid that has wild shape, or a paladin that can glow with the power of holy power. Maybe the dragonborn are humanoid, like humans, halflings, gnomes, or something. But the important thing is, upon their command, maybe they change and transform into these dragon born, and the born portion of it is more internal, spiritual than it is external. Also, I'm imagining that maybe a plot could be that the true dragons really do want to come back, and they lack power, or maybe they are fearful of the original dragon slayers, or maybe some of them even feel sorry for their lesser kind and either want to use them as an army or put them out of their misery, or may even feel embarrassed by it. Or of course there's rage and anger at what humanity has brought them down to, have reduced them down to nothing so much as a commodity to be used in a zoo. And even maybe one of the plots that brought the dragons down was not the dragon slayers doing battle in fields with swords and axes and spears and arrows against them, but maybe it was something more insidious, like, or more subtle, like a disease or a parasite or a spell or some kind of concoction that affected the dragon's births, so that when the eggs gave birth, instead of another majestic black dragon, it just the egg cracked and out of it came a host of dozens of kobolds or something. Or instead of the green dragon the egg cracking open, it's another green. Instead, it was a basilisk or a wyvern or something, and something could be done. And maybe just maybe, there's a sage out there who has made a formula that cures what has been ailing the dragon kind for all this time. And so, unfortunately, up until this time, the dragon eggs are not true to themselves. But a sage or something has the formula to help the dragons grow to become, instead of giving birth to, a basilisk or a wyvern or a serpent or even a dragon turtle, maybe instead when the eggs hatch, it will be a true dragon, only if they can get their hands on this, basically a weapon of mass destruction, a cure for the dragons themselves. And the push and pull could be, do we want the dragons to return to their former glory? Do we reestablish the dragon slayers who are, while the dragon slayers in today's world might be going after giant alligators and and pseudo dragons and other worms and lizards and reptiles and such that are not true dragons, but bringing those dragon slayers back to glory. Of course, again, the people that want to free them, and mind you, with dragons, of course, they come in. There's the metallic dragons of good, and then there are the chromatic dragons of evil. You could very easily reskin the other lizard and reptilian-like creatures in the world, such as a lizard folk, Yuan-Ti, Naga. I'm stumbling over. My mind is like stumbling over a host of other things of which I can't remember all the names of them. But both humanoid and monstrous reptilian creatures could be reskinned. For example, maybe an Arctic wyvern, instead of a poisonous tail that strikes you with the poison and you die from it, changing the damage to cold and frost, so that if it strikes you with the tail, you'll be covered in ice and suffer extreme frostbite. Whereas the exact same wyvern in, I don't know, a volcanic region, maybe its tail has a little bit of like a flame to it attached to the end. Hey, it could even be like a gas flame or something, and it flies around, and if it whips you with the tail, you will be lit on fire, basically changing the damage of it. And the same goes for all the other things, right? Like a basilisk, we all know, if you look, the basilisk looks at you much like a Medusa, you'll turn to stone. But maybe an Arctic one with white scales freezes you solid in a block of ice, or I don't know, in a black dragon-esque basilisk turns you into, I don't know, a pool of sludge or something temporarily, or semi-permanently, or no, maybe sludge. You still want to look like yourself, so maybe you're encased in some kind of like cocoon or something. The same would be for like a green dragon version of a basilisk. Maybe you turn into an unmoving, shambling mound, just vines growing all over your body, and you are a mere shadow, humanoid shadow of what you used to be until you're freed or something. So yeah, I love reskinning and reflavoring things. But again, in this world, the player characters may be tasked with going after the eggs or um, re basically breaking the backs of the wild dragon-like creatures, meaning like a horse, like needing to tame them and train them, or the players are in a caravan to take them from, maybe there's a great marriage between two uh, noble families or entities, and this is like a dowry. This is like a gift to the families for the merger of these two great families, and the player characters are there to assess the situation. Or the player characters could be part of the law enforcement arm of the world, where they are the knights, the samurai, they are the guardians, and they ride upon either the unflying lizard-like creatures, or maybe they are flying, and more so, maybe even the player characters could be the outsiders of the world, meaning like if my character is a warlock and my warlock patron is a dragon, or I want to play a cleric or a paladin, and instead of, let's reskin the paladin features so it is not just about radiance and light, but maybe it's based around reskinned and reflavored based around the copper dragon or something. So instead of my smite having like radiant damage or what have you, it is based upon I'm a paladin of a particular type of dragon, whether it's chromatic or metallic or something. If you want to use any of those specific restrictions and whatnot, basically saying that all the chromatics are evil and all the metallics are good. I could imagine, instead of a wizard school, wizards and those who cast magic might need to search out the last of the true dragons to learn from them, and other than the dragons wanting to return to this world, maybe, just maybe, they want to leave behind a legacy. And I mean, they could have very much anger, but maybe they're just not awakened, and it's the magic is drained from the world, or they are the last of their kind, and if for no other reason than to spread, the red dragon spreading its legacy to a host of teaching its magics or granting its abilities to a host of pyromancers or something of that nature. Or it could be the opposite. The player characters find an egg and see the birth of a young red dragon, and they are destined to protect it so that it doesn't get captured and used as a commodity, or as some drug dealer's ego boost thing, sleeping, used as a footstool, or put in a cage and used for the human population or humanoid population go by and spend a couple of copper to go, ooh, ah, or used in some kind of circus or something of that nature. I mean, all these things could happen around, could be used, stories could be told around dragons, with the overbearing threat that one day they might return. But, people, we as human beings get pretty comfortable even in the most dire or strangest strangest of events, and human beings getting comfortable around big cats is just a tip of the iceberg of the things that we can get used to. And of course, I've been talking all about bringing back dragons, fighting dragons, slaying them, all the subcategories, the worms and serpents and wyverns and things. But there's also all the drama that happens with the people, which is kind of why this is based around the Tiger King documentary. There's also all the people around it, right? So at lower levels, if you wanted to run a world where dragons have influenced culture in all of its myriad forms, you could have, there's, of course, as not giving away much in the documentary, they talk about murder and murder for hire and people going missing. And, who's to say that a criminal doesn't take their victims or something that and take them to their pens and throw them into the pens to be devoured by these very powerful, vast lizards. Who's to say that doesn't happen? And the player characters are investigating it, and of course, no one's saying anything. Or the anger and frustration when two groups of people trying to buy or sell or trade or even breed their draconic or pseudo draconic creatures, that something doesn't happen and one or more of them gets loose. The player characters come in to put a stop to it, and of course they need to find and apprehend the violators. But of course they're all looking at each other, twiddling their thumbs like, I didn't do anything, don't look at me, look at them. Yeah, there could be so many other things, and of course the economy around it, right? Kind of a shame if the player characters or even the world are using these grand lizards to fly on, or used as labor, or guardians or hunters, maybe using their very skin as armor, using their blood in alchemical concoctions, using their organs to cast magics and things, only to discover that, of course, humanity, proud that they've brought low the grand worms of the ancient dragons that used to dominate the land so many generations ago, but now we've taken them over. We're the kings of this world. And to know on the horizon the great dragons, the chromatic and metallic dragons, this might be the one thing, the very single thing that binds them together to bring back their kind, if for no other reason than to bring them back as leaders, the demigods, the warlock patron level power that they used to have, or still have. I did bring that up. They could still be around, to bring them back. And humanity's got to go. And the PCs are like, you guys, listen, you can't keep them in cages, because the great worms, they're going to be pissed at us. And people are like, nah, we're using them as farm animals and carrying our crap around and using them to fly on, and the nice orders like, but I just domesticated my great white, I don't know, lizard thing, pterodactyl, whatever it is. I've just dominated it. Why would I want to give this up? And so that there could be some tension or contention in there, or like I said before, maybe everything is geared from the top to the bottom in culture about around dragons. For example, the people in the Great North have shaped their culture around the ancient white dragons, to the point where that's kind of their clothing and their weaponry and their magic, and even class features and functions may operate in such a way that they are based around the dragons, right? Like, for example, what's another class? I already talked about warlocks and even clerics, but let's take a rogue, right? You could even say that a rogue up in the north is more adapted to hide and sneak around because of the white furs and other things that they have. Heck, even their you could change the sneak attack damage that they have, and change that the damage potential, that it becomes cold damage or something. Or like a bard could sing songs of the ancient creatures, or maybe they're not even songs at all. Maybe a bard's influence is more draconic in terms of the languages that they speak, and you could even make this visual like a bard and their bardic inspiration isn't so much words and music that people walking around with a lute or a lyre in battle is kind of ridiculous. But you could reflavor what bardic inspiration looks like as an ephemeral spirit of the dragons over top of someone, and this thing helps others because through them they are able to bring back their ancient legacy. So their allies, a fighter in a group, and they've got bardic inspiration, but really it looks like a maybe a small dragon sitting on their shoulder, and it looks kind of ghostly, or maybe even a large dragon kind of hanging around over top of them. It's like 12 feet tall, but it looks like a gossamer image, like you kind of see through it, almost like a hologram or some such. Maybe even like the fighter class, as boring as it could be. Maybe the fighter class isn't so much training to be a warrior, but a common individual who has accepted the the spirit of the dragon inside of them. So it's not that they're trained to fight. It's like all of a sudden the spirit goes inside of them, and over the course of a couple hours, now they can fight because they're filled with like a draconic power to strike and come back. Maybe the second wind isn't a second wind at all, but the spirit of a dragon raising them from the ground to stand up once again, and maybe their eyes flash and they draw their weapon, and much like there's an anime called Saint Seiya that does such a thing, or like a Dragon Ball Z kind of like power up or something. Their second wind is like dragon wings seem to sprout from their back, and claws, draconic claws seem to surround their hands and such, much like what's the role playing game? Exalted, much like Exalted, and it's only a split second it happens, and they go back into the fray, fighting and chopping and slaying things. I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. But again, using the backdrop of this, pulling from this Tiger King documentary, filling the world with NPCs that have strange and bizarre. Oh yeah. Deadman says like Vixen from the DC comics. Yeah, absolutely. Remember what was the? I don't remember the name, but Vixen had an animated version. Maybe there were two animated versions. Anyway, there's an animated version with the same concept where, for those who don't know, the DC Comics character Vixen, who's kind of a B-level, some would say C-level character, is a person with like a tribal medallion, and she is a character who looks human, but is able to take on the abilities and features of wild animals. And so if she touches her amulet and takes on the aspect of an elephant, she's still a human being, but she takes on their power and their strength. And of course, the way they visually show it is that for a split second, you see like an ephemeral image of the great animals, like whether it's a gorilla or an elephant or a tiger or a python or something, and you'll see that kind of wrap around her, but she's still a human being. And yes, I am thinking of the exact same thing. Like you could pick any character class and shape it around dragons. And again, I picked dragons. Yeah, yeah, Tesla. Yep, Vixen is a female superhero from Zambezi who adopts the abilities of animals. Using her Tantu totem, she can channel the powers of the animal kingdom by tapping into the morphogenic field. Yeah, it doesn't need any science behind it. I don't know why I need to that's a comic book thing. But yes, I can imagine the same thing. Now, the reason, going back again, the reason why I'm picking dragons. Oh, that's right. She was on Legends of Tomorrow for a while too. She was fun. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, the reason why I picked dragons again for fantasy is because I feel like dragons represent the epitome of a predator. They are a pinnacle predator in a fantasy world, whereas like in our real world, tigers kind of represent that as well. So, and of course, again, dragons historically have kind of been a culmination of all the things we fear as human beings, things that are bigger than us. Lizards like snakes, we fear fire. We fear predators like wolves and felines and lupines and such. And so we crave the ability to fly. And also, there's a little bit of a fear of like predatory birds. And so dragons kind of represent that. I suppose if you wanted to make this a little more mundane, I could imagine using the same draconic element but making it more tribal. So I'm looking over at you, Black Panther, and that kind of tribalistic game setting. If someone wanted to do this, keep it with the tiger and the exotic Joe kind of thing, where humanity has gone out to capture these wild animals, but there are people who still remember them when they were free and are able to embrace the power they once had, or want to bring back the power that they once had, but humanity has brought the natural world down low. And so there's a combination of like an age of exploration and also an age of natural power, elemental power, as well as competing against an age of industry. So what I mean is, for example, tigers. I'm trying to think of the most powerful, psychologically powerful animals in our own world, like tigers, elephants, gorillas, most snakes, whether they are pythons, rattlesnakes, cobras, black mambas. Insects could fit into that. Black widows, mantis, praying mantis, there are tarantula, wasps, maybe, but those kind of insects, scorpions, most predatory birds, eagles, hawks, falcons, owls, and such. Right. So, follow me down this rabbit hole. The Not just reserved for rangers or druids, but maybe, just maybe, various races and or character options, or Kais of Girlantry says the big bad wolf. Yeah, maybe character options are based around the power of these different animals. And so there are clans, tribes, bloodlines dedicated to these specific things. For example, if you just want to go cats, the differences between Black Panthers, cheetahs, leopards, ocelots, tigers, white tigers, lions, and each of them could be their own thing. For example, if I want to play a barbarian, and you could just reflavor it that you grow like lion-like claws and a mane around your head when you more like there's a Marvel character, Rain Sinclair, a wolfsbane, right? Where you take on an animalistic like shape when you do a certain thing. Maybe a bard doesn't sing at all. Maybe a bard who is avian related uses like bird calls or something, and their bardic inspiration looks like a bird that sits on the shoulder or flies over the head of those that they've given their inspiration to. Or instead of songs, like worded songs, maybe they are able to mimic the sounds of certain animals. That same bard with a tiger aspect may do the exact same thing, like roaring, the different sounds that a tiger would make. A predatory tiger are the sounds that come out of the throat of the bard, much like how classically Tarzan used to mimic sounds of wild animals and things of that nature. And both animated and live action versions of Tarzan kind of mimicked the character Vixen from DC in a way, by pulling the best aspects of the creatures and animals around them. I think it fits perfectly with a monk. My martial arts style is tiger style, or crane, or we've seen that in classic Hong Kong action movies and such. So why not the same thing? I've got gorilla style, or elephant style or something like that. Even I I would even allow someone to go so far as to reflavor and reskin even spell or class like abilities, but have them take the form of the natural order. So instead of it looking like a magic missile, a flock of like ravens flies past someone and claws at them, or uh, a number of gorillas or I don't know, smaller animals, bonobos or something, leaps out of the trees out of nowhere and throws rocks at people, or they jump through the air and knock these people down, i.e., they take some force damage, and then they leave and jump out into the woods or something. That might be stretching it a little bit for some people, some players to like wrap their heads around that. Like, it's not really a spell; it's me summoning, summoning something from the outskirts for it to hit someone to then disappear. Because then you're like, well, why wouldn't it stick around? But if you could wrap your heads around it, I think it could work in that aspect. And again, if you wanted to make it something ephemeral, so my wizard is a tiger wizard. Of course, you may not call yourself a wizard. You might call yourself something like a shaman or a yogi or a medium or a tiger's call or whatever. And so maybe there's like a more of a spiritual connection to it, where your magics are like a gossamer yeah, a gossamer image of the thing is in and around you, that does a thing, or maybe there are a number of animals that do that. So Deadman says use the capuchin monkey. The capuchin monkeys, or the New World monkeys of the subfamily Sabine or Cabine, they are readily identified as the organ grinder monkey. Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe that is the case, right? Like, could you imagine? And I know, understand. Again, this might be a little bit difficult to wrap one's head around, but a bard who has like the organ grinder monkey, that thing may not be an actual physical monkey, but when they give their bardic inspiration, the monkey is actually jumps onto or hangs on the shoulder of another player character, and that's what it represents, kind of. If you guys understand my meaning, and the same. Now, mind you, there are like unearthed arcana and even third party things where, like, there's a ranger subclass that's like a swarm. So if you wanted to do insects, maybe all of the decisions that the players make are wrapped around the natural world, or again, like Black Panther, there could be different clans. There was the Jabari clan based around the mountains and the gorilla, whereas of course the Black Panther is wrapped around the Black Panther clan, and I think that'd be a really great way to incorporate such a thing. Now, mind you, you might want to be a little sensitive to at your table. You can do whatever the hell you want to, but if you want to put this out into a wider range, you might want to be sensitive to, say, some of the real peoples. If you're mimicking some of the real historical or tribalistic people in our own world, that engage in those kind of things, versus, and of course the stereotype would be explorers versus natural order, which you might, if you don't want to stick very close to that, there could be some kind of weird, the player characters could be smack in the middle of a weird middle ground, or some kind of like strange dichotomy where part of humanity is like, no, we need to dominate these things. The animals out there are dangerous to us. Industry is where it is. Those creatures are nothing but commodities, and we don't care if we're slaughtering them by the thousands, right? Whereas, of course, the natural order is like, take down humanity, take down the cities, take down industry. It needs to all go back to to the wildland, and maybe there's something in the middle where the, the animals may be under our control, but they're not necessarily pets, and having protected havens for them might be a good thing to protect them from many of the predators out there, both so-called civilized humans and the wild. So maybe the player characters kind of represent this tenuous middle ground between the two, and maybe it is good, with the natural order. Some things eat other things. Maybe it is good to kill a few of the bison or water buffalo because people need to eat them, but not slaughtering all of them at the same time. Whereas, letting them all run free without eating them may not be a proper thing as well. Now, of course, that would be based on, some people take it pretty personally when it comes to killing animals and eating meat and whatnot. But as a piece of fiction for your table, I would go for something like that. I think it's a really cool thing to do that and reskin it or reflavor it or something. And much like Black Panther, who takes on the mantle, it's possible that people are striving to take on the mantle of these great things. Like, for example, maybe the goal is, from these strange NPCs that are in the world, if they're able to take on the mantle of the great tiger, and take on the mantle of the great bird, and take on the mantle of the king of snakes, and take on the mantle of the insect queen or something. Like, you could take on multiple mantles which stack on top of each other, and maybe that's kind of the version in this world of becoming a grand lich. Like, if I take on the mantle of all of these things, I become the master of the world, or even elemental world, even, which is a possibility. I don't know. It would have to do some work on it, or at least get some buy-in from your players. It wouldn't have to change too much. You would just have to reflavor your terminology. Maybe the classic classes, fighter, bard, warlock, cleric, may have to go away, and instead, replace them with things like, I don't know, hunter, stalker, shaman, I don't know, herbalist, whatever. You just start reskin and reflavor them. I understand that the sexy thing is to come up with new subclasses and class features, but with a simple rename, sometimes a reflavor, it's pretty easy to just, what's the difference between a wizard and a shaman? Words, usually. And what's the difference between, I don't know, a cleric and a cleric or a shaman? Not much, except words. And of course, reskinning and reflavoring things. Sometimes we can get caught up in what a thing is named. I'm going to butcher this, but somewhere in literature, there's some kind of quote that says that when you name a thing, you reduce what it is. You take away what it is. Or the other version is, a rose is still a rose by any other name, meaning like, renaming something doesn't change what it is, but sometimes by giving it a name, we automatically associate it with something, such as using the term paladin, bard, and warlock. We are calling something a warlock, gives it a connotation that it otherwise wouldn't have had another name, right? Same thing with paladin. If they had originally been called something like oath takers or what have you, or warlocks were instead changed to become like the devout, or maybe that would be more for clerics, or I don't know what you could call a warlock. If it changed it to something that has to do with not selling your soul, but making a deal or serving a greater power or a patron or something, then it would have less of those connotations. Just like the bard, right? I mean, a bard could be a military leader barking orders. A bard could be any of the artistic endeavors, whether it's dance or music or acting or poetry, or anything of that nature, storytellers or something. But most people think bard, lute, lyre, flutes, that kind of thing. Although, in a tribal sense, of course, there would be people who there are an extreme number of musical talents by all of the peoples around the world, depending on how far you go back into the past or different generations of the past. And so pulling from them, I think would be kind of cool. Kind of like, in my head, I'm thinking of, like right now, in my head, I'm thinking of capoeira and the stringed instrument played, the bimbao, the stringed instrument that's played when people perform capoeira in Brazilian capoeira. And it's a martial art, and it has music to it, and it is very much it used to be associated with like criminality, and also has a lot of association with slavery. The people who would dance and entertain themselves while practicing these martial arts under their rulership. I know I'm segueing a little bit, but I guess the point I'm making is that if you wanted to make your world and shape your world around something as strange and odd as like tigers, there's a way to do it without us limiting ourselves just because something is named something, right? A character who has the tiger spirit could very well be a wizard or a bard or a fighter or a barbarian or something, or any rogue, even any combination thereof, and calling it that. Who's to say that a rogue's sneak attack isn't like a martial arts tiger-like ability, or who's to say that they don't, when a rogue strikes from a hidden location or whatever, that for a moment, just a moment, kind of like Vixen, that there's something tiger-like about them, and then they rip someone's throat out and keep on going, and that's the place. Deadman says the quote, naming something reduces its power, comes from the book The Place of Dead Roads. Thank you very much. Again, you guys know I always I pull the reference without getting it correct, so that's what I do here, and everyone else makes me look brilliant. Thank you, Deadman. Yes, I absolutely agree that naming something does reduce its power, but we have the ability to rename it too, so why not? Why the hell not? The same goes for spells and all of that in our classic fantasy gaming as well, right? Why is it called Magic Missile? Doesn't have to be called that. Remember, Tensor's floating disk was created by the wizard Tensor, which in some iterations of the game is just called floating disk. Why wouldn't a spell be named after something or someone, or be associated with a particular spiritual entity or the power of a certain type of animal or creature in your world? And of course, when we go back to our NPCs and the people in the world, this is a great way to incorporate the setting and the behavior of your world along with the powers and the player characters. For example, in most games, like a player casts a spell. Let's go back to Magic Missile. All right, I cast a Magic Missile. All right, once it's done, there's no side effects. There's no residue. People don't, it's our fault that people don't act and or react to such a grand thing happening. Someone literally, pointed their finger and shot something out, if that's what it looks like, or summoned something, or blasted someone, or whatever. And to have that as part of the world, to know that there are creatures that can sense it, or the people know where that power comes from, whether it's some kind of spiritual entity or the power of dragons, let's say, or whatnot, is because it's flavored for you. Maybe people are scared, or they're in awe, or they feel like you could save them because you represent one of these great, vast, powerful entities. Maybe one or more of these powerful entities' agents comes to you to serve them, or maybe one of these enclosed creatures happens to have just a little bit of its sentience left, held in a cage, and says, I see you carry the mark of so and so. Please, we are alike. Save me, or something like that. And the player may not be looking for that, but maybe it brings up more. Anything that creates story and drama. Conflict is where drama comes from. Most it's why in television shows, his and her scenarios where he and she want to get together, but for some reason they just don't. The reason they don't get together, or they get together but something else happens that starts to break them apart, is because conflict is where drama comes from. Without the conflict, there is no drama. You would just be watching people happy, and you can't do that for a 22 minutes of a half hour show, or 47 minutes of an hour show, right? You can't do that on television. You need conflict and you need drama. And one great way to do that, and also to make the players feel like badasses, is to act and react off of what they do and who they are and where they're from. Classically, in the old Hong Kong action movies, there was a difference between tiger style versus snake style. Anybody remember Jackie Chan, The Snake and Eagle's Shadow? Anybody remember Dance of the Drunken Mantis? Now, mechanically, might not be much of a difference, right? Mechanically, we're all monks. Maybe throwing some fighter and barbarian and some rogue in there, right? Maybe it's all the same, but thematically they're not, right? So, thematically, when a player character has their power from a great white dragon and they're using their charmed person, who's to say that the person that they're charming, their eyes don't become crystalline, and when they perform your actions, when they are charmed, that there's like that cold, I'm calling it cold mist. The when someone breathes out, in and out, when their breath turns cold, maybe that is a side effect of what happens when you do that particular act on them. Whereas maybe a great red who uses charm person, maybe there's a fire behind the person's eyes, and smoke leaks out of the person's mouth, or something. I don't know, but you understand what I'm saying, right? Maybe there's a halo of cold from a white dragon wizard, as opposed to maybe little tiny dancing fairy fire, much like embers. When you start a fire and you have with wood and you have the little embers floating in the air, maybe that surrounds the individual's head when you charm them or something. And that's a great, not only a descriptor, but it also could send a message of who you are, what your power is for good or bad, and make that an element of the world. Same thing when it comes to players with tattoos and the way they dress and the way they fight. Oh, I see. You fight with tiger style. Well, my crane style will defeat you, and then you go into a fight or something. Why couldn't there be? You just rename the fighter archetypes to make them part of your world. Maybe there's a fighter that's trying to learn, who came from the Great Plains and is a lion-maned fighter. Like, he wears a vest with like a big lion's mane or something, but goes to a place where there is another fighting style in that place, maybe in the jungles, and learns more of a capuchin monkey style, right? And combines the two. And so when someone wants to, maybe an enemy sees this great lion-maned warrior, they're like, oh, I know what he can do. And then all of a sudden the fighter breaks out in the monkey style and like flips and jumps and hangs by one foot off of something and hit somebody while they're hanging by their feet upside down in the rafters might be kind of cool to do that. And, come on now. If we're going to do that, we might allow their acrobatics to look a particular way when they perform a certain action, or maybe it's just flavor. You guys know, like, I have a two-step rule when it comes to the rule of cool. Either let the players do the cool thing with neither a benefit nor penalty. So, player character says, I'm going to use my monkey style and jump on all fours. I'm going to jump off the table, grab the chandelier, swing on the chandelier, do a backspin, land on top of the person, and when I knock them to the ground, I'm going to roll and come up in a crouch, like, and scratch behind my ear when I do it, right? Maybe that's just an attack roll. It looks cool. They described it looking cool, but maybe it's just an attack roll. Okay, meaning no penalty, no benefit. Right? Instead of asking for, like, well, make an acrobatics check since he wants to swing on the chandelier and bounce off the wall and do a backflip and jump on a person. Because if they fail, there's a penalty, but they gain nothing from the success. Or as within the rules of, like, say, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, you could ask for an additional roll, giving them a benefit. Maybe they gain advantage on the attack, or maybe not only do they get to pummel the person, but they also get to knock them prone, which isn't normally attached to the attack they're doing. That's the benefit, but the downfall is they fall down, or they're unable to spread the distance, or the very next attack against them will be, will also have advantage against them, or something like that, right? If you're going to make them suffer the penalty if they don't, give them the benefit if they do. So maybe they get an extra die of attack, or maybe they don't spend the bonus action to do the thing because they made a successful roll, or whatever the case might be, or they're able to ignore the difficult terrain of moving through the jungle by swinging through the vines and up above the person to jump behind them, or what have you. So give them the benefit. If you're going to make them roll, give them a benefit, because if they miss the roll, the acrobatic skill check or whatever, then you're penalizing them. So my thing is nothing, no gain, no loss. It's just cool looking, or the other way. So that's how I feel about that. But anyway, guys, thank you very much. By the way, just want to let you know that there is a possibility that future Friday may turn into an interview. Trying to arrange interviews can be kind of difficult, especially for this channel, since we go live for an hour every day, Monday through Friday. So getting in an interview either has to happen on weekends, and time frames are rather difficult for me. So there is a possibility, but I will let you know ahead of time, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that will happen. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me and letting me ramble and do all that crazy crap that I do on this channel. It is unscripted each day, Monday through Friday. We usually take a subject. Next week's subject, most likely, will be about the weather. We were talking about how, many of us live in areas where you can get a number of seasons that happen in a single day. Wow, maybe we might go into that. So anyway, guys, located down in the doobly-doo, you can find all kinds of information, who I am. I write with Critical Hit Publishing, how to get into contact with me. Please leave comments. I read all the comments, and I may even bring them up later on. And of course, participate in the show live. And if you really want to help the show out, I'm not asking for, like, financial help or anything, but like, share, subscribe, follow, ring that bell to get notified. And of course, if you are a Twitch affiliate, go over to Twitch and become a follower. If I become an affiliate, that will help me unlock things to make this show better for you. So guys, thank you very much. Have a great day. I'll see you later. Bye.